We are live. Welcome to the first episode of the Uncertainty Hour. Today, I'm joined by someone very special, the Honorable Rosemarie Aquilina. We're going to have Rosemarie on in just a moment, but I want to start off with something. There's a great quote that I thought about when I was making the first episode of the Uncertainty Hour. And that quote is this: "The radio will someday become a fascinating tool for mass hypnotism." Media is something that's so interesting to me, and making content is something that I find absolutely compelling. But when I think about making content, I think about somebody who I have followed since I was a young man. So I'm a lawyer by training. I did my law studies at Michigan State University of College of Law. And this is where I met our very special guest, the Honorable Rosemarie Aquilina. How are you?
I am great, and I am so honored to be the first guest that you've had, and you were such a terrific student, and I've watched you blossom. But now, as you're talking, I'm thinking not only can he mesmerize a jury, but he has quite the radio television voice. I did not know that. I mean, I knew that in the courtroom, but to hear you, amazing.
I really appreciate that. I love looking at trial practice as performance art. It is talking to people about things that they don't understand. And you have to bring it to them at a level where they can go, this makes sense to me. And when I had a chance to study under you, you are a sitting judge, you are an author, you are a lawyer, you're a mother. But the highlight has got to be having me as a student. So what's that like, having me as a student?
It's such an honor to have had you as a student, but it's more of an honor to watch how you've grown and have taken what what little I imparted on you and all the other professors imparted on you and the hard work you did, and to watch you grow. And the great thing is, it's not just you, it's the thousands and thousands of students I've had in over 40 years of teaching, because I feel like they're all my kids that I gave a little piece of me, and now they're in the world and doing magnificent things, and you happen to be one of them. So I feel like I'm talking to my son, who hasn't called in a couple of years.
He should call. What's his name?
Well, Matthew Loeffler.
I just want to say, we have a LinkedIn user who says another student is here. I'm not sure who it is, but we have many students all across the world that are tuning in. Michigan State University College of Law is a foundational piece of my identity. Today, I serve on the alumni board for our alumni association, and it has been a blessing to do this. Now, I have to start off by saying, can you give our audience kind of an overview of what got you into the law and what made you motivate to keep doing it?
What got me into the law was defiance of my father. I always wanted to be an author, and I've authored now 4 books. There are several more I'm writing now, and I hope to publish a few every year. And all I wanted to be was a writer. And so I went to Michigan State, my undergrad, in English and journalism. And my father kept saying, "And what are you going to do? And what are you going to do? You have to be a doctor," because of course, he's a doctor. And I said, "I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a writer." And for my dad, that's like me saying, "You're going to Hollywood and you're going to be a waitress," because nobody's going to make it into film, because it just doesn't happen except to very few people. And he wanted to see me succeed as a doctor. I can promise you with my life and everything I own that there's not one human who wants me to be a doctor or a vet. I don't have the training. I don't have the mind. I don't have that skill set. Both my brothers are doctors. My sister and I are lawyers. Anyways, and how I decided then to be a lawyer was, I was standing in the foyer of our home, and he's yelling at me about how he's not going to support me and how dare I not find a career. And of course, medicine is the best career in the whole world. So I looked at him and I said, "Fine, I will be a lawyer." And the reason that came to me, because I had never, ever talked about or thought about being a lawyer. And the reason I said it is because doctors hate lawyers.
So that's a great origin story. Is this to spite your father? That's the great story.
And ultimately, I have to say, then I thought, okay, and now I'm going to be, at the top of my field. So I eventually will be a judge. I have that sort of temperament. And then I went and I got my teaching degree as well, because I thought, that's really going to piss him off. He's not going to help me pay for school. So I had all my bases covered. So I've taught ever since, college, at one level or another. and I've really enjoyed it and learned so much from the students, because I always feel like all the students are smarter than me. So I try to stay a step ahead. And it can be hard because I feel like every year the students get smarter and I get dumber. But anyway, so I eventually started writing, because, in law school, they teach us to think, the facts. What are the facts? What's the rule? What's the issue? And I was used to creative writing. So all of my first year's exams, if you looked at them, they're horrible, because every single professor wrote on my exam, "This is not an English class, just the facts." So I had to retrain my thinking, and then I had to retrain myself again to be creative in my writing. So I've gone through a lot of metamorphosis. And ultimately, I've done a lot of things. I've worked in the legislature. I've always been teaching, and I was in the military as the first female JAG officer in the history of the Michigan Army National Guard. My father was in the Army. My uncle was on the USS Bainbridge in the Navy. And of course, when I said I was going to go in, my father didn't talk to me for a year. How
Why?
dare I? Because mothers don't go in the Army. And I had
Oh.
in law school. And I said, really, Just Watch Me, which is by happenstance the name of my memoir, Just Watch Me, because people
Yeah.
keep telling me no. And I keep saying, just watch me. And I accomplish it. So, now I'm doing a lot of things. I'm writing. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm teaching. I'm being a judge. I have a podcast as well. We'll have to have you on, called Warrior
I
Women.
can't wait. We got a
Yeah.
note from one of our audience members, PJ, saying, "Love this. Thank you, PJ, for watching."
Yeah.
You were watching an expert practice their art. Judge Aquilina, I love talking to you. So my story with becoming a lawyer was I got an undergraduate degree in political science, and I said, I don't want to do this. This sounds like there's not really a career. No one was hiring poli-sci guys. Like, I'll delay my being an adult by going to law school. And I did that. I delayed it for 3 years, and then I got to practicing. So as you've held different roles in law. So you've done private practice, you've had your own firm, you've been a judge. What are the challenges that make each role different? What one do you enjoy the most?
Oh, geez. Honestly, I also had a radio show called Ask the Family Lawyer, and I thought that was.
I saw that in the notes. Okay, now I want to know about that one. Tell
Yeah.
me about that
So
one.
one day I in my law firm, and I hope all of you who are out there who are budding lawyers do this. I always picked up the phone when it rang, and there are a lot of people who they can't afford $2 or $3 or $500 an hour. They just have really a small issue. So I would answer the question. And one day I had several calls that I thought, geez, what's going on here? And I said to my secretary, I ought to be Fraser. And she said, oh, no. And so within the next few weeks, I talked to radio stations and ultimately got a show called Ask the Family Lawyer. And I was on number of different stations, and finally landed on one, and then became syndicated. And that was just a lot of fun. I used to have guests like lawyers and judges and therapists, and, talking about things that people needed to hear. They don't want to read the books. They're scared to go to the courtroom or even to their lawyer's office. And so they would ask me these terribly interesting questions. And we just had fun, like you and I are doing now.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the most fun job I have had, which really is kind of opposite my personality, is being a JAG officer in the military. And I'll tell you why. And I don't know how. I think there's a lot of people who feel that they don't fit. I don't know how other people feel. But as a woman, I have been rejected for jobs. I've been told I can't do this or that. I've been treated like less than, but not in the Army. In the Army, you are part of a finely tuned machine. You all have your mission, and we have to work cohesively and keep our morale up. And based on rank and duty, we get our job done. So I was always treated as my rank and duty. And there was just a lot of respect there always. It wasn't you are a woman. It was you are an officer. You are a JAG officer. I was either prosecutor, judge, or defense counsel, depending. I advised the command. I did a lot of different things, but I was always treated as a uniform, a credible human being, not somebody slotted in, oh, you're a woman, you're less than. And I just find that terribly refreshing. Now, the women, there are women and men who complain about the military, but I'm just not one of them. Have I seen bad things? Sure. Bad things are in every line of work. You can't escape bad people, right? They're everywhere. And if there was only good people, I wouldn't be a judge, right? But anyway, um, so yeah, the military has some problems, but I found it to be the most uplifting, rewarding, cohesive, positive career I held. And I have a lot of them.
What I'm always fascinated about, like talking to lawyers, talking to doctors, and talking to judges, is how often we deal with trauma, the worst things in the world. We think of death all the time because that's what happens. Like you don't get the lawyer involved if that's you scratch your knee. You get the lawyer involved when something catastrophic happens. And as you talked about the challenge of dealing with things that are really bad, I think about the Nassar trial. I would
Mhm.
love if you could give us a little bit of an overview of what that case was about, what it is that you saw, and just kind of what that impact had with you and your team. Because obviously, behind the judge is a whole team. Like that's another thing
Yeah.
our guests don't really know is this is an operation. This is a big thing. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
So I can't talk. I can talk somewhat about it. What's publicly out there, what I said from the
Absolutely.
bench. There's still one appeal pending, so I'm a bit locked in. But ultimately, Nasser was the doctor for the Olympians. He also had other patients, but he was doing pelvic floor adjustments, basically, and that is something that generally is for old people. It is a treatment, but it is not for ankles and it is not for young people generally. I think I watched a show on, I don't remember if it was 2020 or 60 Minutes, and they talked about that treatment. And the doctor on there who'd been in practice 20 or 30 years says, I've never done that on a child. And ultimately, he was using this treatment by and putting his hands in females and I think a few males as well, without gloves, without lubricant, without explanation, no informed consent, no signed consents, no talking to the patient or the parent about what that procedure was. It was always about making the person better for whatever ailed them, and this was going to help them. And he would do it not just in his medical office or clinic, but rather in his home and everywhere. Just it was really horrifying. And ultimately, what I learned from that, I think what the world saw, is that if you're a victim, you need to speak in a safe place and not be blamed so that we get the whole story. Anybody can be groomed. Grooming is really where somebody is giving you gifts and things that are inappropriate and making you believe that they're the only ones that can help you or save you. They sort of tear you down and control you that way. They tear you down and they're the only ones that can uplift you. They're the only ones that can, he's the only one that can get them to the Olympics. He was giving them inappropriate gifts. There's lots of things that went on, telling the parents and the school and the law enforcement, what he was doing was treatment and he was the only one and the best one, etc. Really grooming everybody. And then those people, those girls who spoke out were gaslighted, saying, well, it's really treatment. You don't know what you're talking about. Everybody's going through it and it's just fine. But you know what? If you want to complain, we don't have to go to the Olympics. And you're really going to hurt the coaching and everything. So they were gaslighted to believe that what was going on was correct and that they were all wrong. And so I think the lessons that really come out that I see so often in many, many, many cases is the gaslighting, the grooming. Sometimes there's ghosting. We didn't have that in Nassar, but ghosting is something, somebody's trying to control you and then they just leave. And of course, now you feel horribly guilty because you feel like, your best friend left or your husband left, your boyfriend left or girlfriend left or whatever, and they're not communicating with you. So you are just a bad person. And that's really intentional. It's very controlling. And it's the power and control wheel. And there's so much that went on with Nassar, but ultimately I had believed that, and I thought it was going to be really the most interesting and educational trial of my career. And I had had many and still have many, but I was told that the people had an expert and that defense had an expert, that what was going on was maybe the cross between something criminal and malpractice. And of course, that's a lawyer's and judge's dream. Like, how does that happen? What's the
Yeah,
story, right? It's like
that's
reading
right.
a good book, right? I want to know the rest of the story. So I thought it was going to be just a terrific case. And then ultimately he came, his attorneys came and the people came, the attorney general, and said he wants to plead, and told me that he was going to plead to 7 counts out of the 29 I think he was charged with, and that they would then not issue on the child pornography that was found on his phone. They wanted to plead after the federal judge acted on that case. And I said no, because we were already set to pick a jury. I had 800 jurors who were going to report in batches of 200 with a special questionnaire, which is a whole other process that's terribly interesting. In fact, the Texas judges invited me and said, "Please tell us how do we do this kind of case?
How do you even do? Oh my gosh, that's complex."
And actually, the NYPD invited me to talk about, what are some of the mistakes, and not, it's Nassar's over, but it's the education about how did we get here. And there's so many more cases, Epstein and Cosby and all those cases that have come forward at University of Michigan. And, that doctor assaulted a couple thousand men. And but he's passed now. So there's lots of lessons to learn. And I think that was really there were so many bad things about Nassar, but it's really, from my perspective, the good thing is, because I like to look at the glass half full, is that this is out in the open as a result of those brave survivors. There were 156 who testified in front of me, 169 altogether, because I read the Crime Victims' Rights Act abroad. It doesn't say only the victim and the count pled to. It says victim. And, victim crime has no border. So if your house is broken into, but you're not home, but your brother's home, and I've had cases like this, your brother's traumatized, but so are you. You're not safe in your home. You get a dog, you get a burglar alarm, you move, you ultimately move. I've had that happen in several cases. And that's because crime doesn't have a border. When you love someone, when you're connected to someone who is assaulted in any way, it affects you. So I let everybody speak. The people had said,
I want to talk on that second.
Yeah.
You allowed these victims to all testify about what they had gone through. And we talk a lot in every type of litigation, in criminal and civil, like those victims need to have a say, but they don't really always get that. Things happen without them being informed or consenting, and they're not really like interested parties necessarily. But you made the decision to allow these folks to testify. That's amazingly powerful. Did people come to you afterwards and say, "Thank you for letting me do this"? What was the reaction for the victims after the amount of people talked about it?
Interestingly enough, I've been a judge 18 years. Back then it was 14 years. And I have, for my whole career, let everybody speak. In fact, the lawyers, the sheriff, everybody says, we want to get out of here, or hurry up. And so they'll tell my staff, they'll say, "Oh, so-and-so." I said, "Well, just reschedule them. I'm going to listen," because I can tell you the most powerful part of my decision making. I don't know about the rest of the judges, because I got mixed. We can talk about that. I got mixed reactions from them. But the most powerful part of any sentencing for me is the backstory. Well, how did we get here? And it's not just how did we get here with the victim? How did we get here with the defendant? What did we miss? Why do I have a defendant in front of me with 37 offenses? What is it we missed? Okay. So the backstory is important. In fact, if you read a novel, the backstory is built into it. And that is what is part of the most engaging part of the book. Obviously, you want to get to the end, but to understand the end, you have to understand the backstory. So I've always done this. So I have victims from years and years ago coming up to me and saying, "Thank you. You have no idea what it meant that I could tell you about my son who was killed, or my daughter who was raped," or, and so that happened with Nassar, and literally globally, I have heard from countries I didn't even know existed, from women saying, all of those people who spoke, they were telling my story, but I haven't been able to speak. But you know what? I listened, and I listened for all 7 days. I didn't commit suicide. I had been planning to commit suicide. I stopped cutting. I'm no longer bulimic. You know why? Because I went and got help, because your words back to the girls told me that I matter, and you are someone in power. And that's the experience that I have when I talk to defendants, and I tell them, you've done all this crime. I know that you can do some good things. Come back and show me what you've done. And I have defendants, not just victims, but defendants coming back and giving me, one man sent me his 10-year AA coin. Another one
Nice.
brought me his music contract and said, "Look what I did because of you." And I said, "I didn't do anything. I opened the door. You had the strength, the guts, the fortitude, the hard work you put into it, and you earned this." And what they tell me time and time again is, "You were the first person who told me I mattered."
I find that fascinating that we as lawyers, and you specifically in these horrifying criminal matters, stare into the abyss, and the abyss stares into you, but you take that evil and that pain and you can turn it into empowerment and bring that voice to people that didn't even know they could have a voice.
Right.
And
And it
it
doesn't matter if it's victim or defendant. It really doesn't. And, for people say, well, but 7 days, how'd you listen to that? You know what? I know you're a dad, and congratulations. You're going to be a dad again, twins. I have twins. They're
ah,
very naughty,
oh,
right?
real quickly, we are now breaking that news. That was not been told
Oh,
yet. So
I'm so
the audience,
sorry. I
you're
did not
good.
know
This is
that.
great. We'll do a quick segue. Today's broadcast. Hold on, give me a second. Today's broadcast is brought to the news that my wife and I have learned that we're not actually having one baby, but we're having two. And so today's broadcast, as I mentioned, is brought to you by two babies due December 3rd. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And if you need more information about the babies that are coming, they're on their way. I will tell you, so this is my second day as an independent company, and
Okay.
I had a problem happen, and maybe you can help me resolve it. So it kind of ties into what we just talked about. I've gotten my coworker pregnant. Now, fortunately, she is my wife, and so she's okay with it. But it's made the office conversation a little awkward. How can I improve that?
Well, since you made this happen, I think that you need to thank her every day and listen. I think listening in every relationship, whatever is going on, is key. And then tell her that you have heard her, you love her, and you support her. And then when she is
Mm.
screaming in pain, hopefully she will remember those kind things that you said, because child labor is not so much fun. But you know what? If
Good
you have
advice.
impregnated her, there is no lack of communication. I say you're just fine in the communication area.
That's a fair statement.
Fair statement, right? Yeah.
I absolutely. I think I found the one of few people who can tolerate me for like as long as she does. So I've been married now. It'll be, I think it's 14 years in August. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We got some more congratulations. And the judge has the best advice. Always take advice
Well,
from the judge. I
yeah.
will die on this hill. I will die on this hill.
Well, the thing about listening to victims, and people say, That's so much pain. How can you listen to victims and defendants and all the things that you have? What do you do? Well, first of all, self-care is really important, and we can talk about that. But ultimately, when you see people and hear people tell their stories, you also watch them heal and grow in front of your eyes. And for me, it's like being handed a new baby when I have someone who's told me their story, their pain, and they've released it in court. And so I have said, and it's part of the Nassar transcript and others, leave your pain here and go out and do your magnificent things. And then come back and show me what great things you've done. And people do. But when you see them grow from someone who's so uncertain, and you can see the light in their eyes and they get taller, it is like being handed that new baby, and I forget the pain and I go on to the next case. And it's just such a beautiful thing that the people have elected me to have this job, and that God has given me these gifts of the people who are in front of me. I don't think of them as bad people. I think of them as people who need help, and I'm there to listen and do what I can.
God calls us to bear witness. We're required to do this. And sometimes clients don't really need legal advice. They just need someone they can talk about what they're dealing with. And that's one of the things I find the most rewarding of the profession as a lawyer is just talking with someone as they wrestle with big problems. Like divorce is really painful. It's a terrible situation, but it's a legal proceeding. And then you divvy up property and you do visitation. It's kind of not as challenging as some folks feel like, but reality is they want to talk about how they feel and what they've encountered. How do you deal with the stuff that you see? Because you're doing all sorts of cases. Like felonies and murders and
Yeah.
also how do you deal with that?
It's what we talked about in class many times, that it is always about the only thing that is in front of you is that case, right? That case, that client that you're sitting with, or the case that's in front of me. So I block out the rest and I totally focus on that. And yeah, sometimes it's just, it's painful to see a dead baby, right? It's painful to see a woman who's been thrown down the stairs and her breast cut and bruised by her husband. It's painful, the things that I see, but I always know that I do my best job that I can for them, that I listen, that in order that it doesn't affect the next case, I do self-care. So I make sure I take vacations, that I write. You can't take a
Yeah.
vacation. I can't go to Hawaii every week, right? So my
We'll find a
vacation,
way. If there's any
right?
viewers watching, we need to get the judge to Hawaii
Yeah.
more often. We'll find a
But
way.
But I write, I
Yeah.
paint, I sew, I cook, I play with my kids. There's projects that I'm working on all the time. So I give my brain a rest by doing something so totally different that it feels like it had a vacation, even though I'm working on something else. And I think we all need to do that kind of self care. So it could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be just choosing to get an extra hour of sleep, whatever it is, you have to do that. And it's something that I've always done. I think it's just something I inherently knew, because now everybody's talking about self-care. Well, it's something I've always done. Um, and my mother keeps saying, how can you do all these things? And I keep saying, how can people not do all these things? Because for me, it's not about the doing of the things, it's about the vacation in my brain.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a comment here from Jeffrey Godwin, a good friend of mine. Jeffrey says, "Congrats, Matt, on your well orchestrated announcement." We did plan that, so that might have looked everybody that was improv. Not at all. We rehearsed it again and again and again, at least 3 hours of practice. Here's what I wonder about now. So, what about for your court staff? Like, what does it take to run a courtroom?
Oh, geez. I am nothing without my staff. I have a great judicial assistant who keeps my paperwork in order, and the phone calls, and makes sure that I have the spelling right when I draft a letter. And I have a law clerk who handles all of these different cases and letters and keeps them organized, and does the draft of my orders, and works with me and doesn't mind that I say, no, this is how I say it. I don't want to say it like that. And I have a court reporter who I always call my silent partner. I know that in class we always talked about court reporters. I think they're terribly
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
The focus they have is just so incredible. But we really work like we did in the military, or like what I was talking about in the military. We work as a unit to make sure that each case has the paperwork and has the amount of time that's needed and is scheduled properly. And as long as people are courteous, if an attorney calls me and says, my refrigerator just blew out, I really can't be to court. And they're honest, I say, okay, let's just reschedule you. I'm not going
Okay.
to be an ogre. Have I been an ogre? Oh, yeah. Misbehave in my courtroom. I'm sure you can find me on YouTube yelling at people. But,
Mm.
I
I'll find some of
expect,
those and I'll throw them in the show
yeah,
notes after this.
yeah.
We'll find a
So
way.
I just expect a certain decorum. And part of that is for safety, right? Your voice
Yeah.
can be used for safety. I've got babies and old people, and the community visits the courtroom, so it has to be for safety. But yeah, we all work together, and law enforcement, they're there,
Yeah,
and
that's
they
right.
pick up on cues. Yeah, we have to make sure that people are safe. We get threats, and we just work toward the goal of having every case heard in the best manner and in the safest situation.
If anyone ever wants to know what a stenographer does, like a court reporter, the device they work with, like Google it, look it up, because it's not in a language any of you would understand. It is incredibly complex. Now that gets me thinking about technology. I mean, like when I was at law school, I was doing Westlaw. I was the Westlaw rep. I was hawking my services saying, let me teach you how to do a good research. How has technology changed in the courtroom since you've been a judge? How's it different?
So with COVID, we started using Zoom. When we realized, hey,
Mm.
we got to get cases moving, and we're not going back anytime soon. What do you do? So we all got Zoom, and we had to do paperwork a little bit differently, get it electronically, and all of that. I finally requested. I got tired of printing out so many papers, so I said I need an iPad. So I have the iPad. I put the documents on, and I have the Zoom with the the computer, and we just do the pleas, sentencings, and all of that on Zoom. Now, it's actually, I have had a greater number of people report to court through Zoom, whereas if we were in the building, they're AWOL. Like, I have to do a bench warrant because it's not as scary sitting at home.
That makes sense.
Right?
They're not going to come in and grab you and pull you away. At least
Right.
not right away.
Right. And
Okay.
so, and I had the first Zoom jury trial, I don't know, a year and a half ago now, too, maybe 2 years now. And actually the jurors, so we picked a jury on Zoom, and then we did the trial distanced and everything in my courtroom. And the jurors afterward, we asked them, and I had my court reporter take it down in case the Supreme Court wanted to look at it, because it was kind of a test case. And the jurors 100% said, please continue to do this. We weren't scared of going to court. We didn't worry about parking or being late. Yeah. And we helped them do backgrounds. So your background, I'm looking saying, oh, that's a really nice cabinet, right? I did some training about doing this. And what we learned through that is that we even had jurors who would say, the woman three windows down, she's got a green shirt on. I need those curtains. Where did she
It's an Etsy store, a community chat.
Of course, we learned that we can't have those distractions. So it took the coordination with the jury clerk and my law clerk to actually take pictures of the wood and the logo. We had to have
public servants, people. This is what they do.
And then everybody uploaded. They helped people upload. So everybody had a plain background. There was nothing distracting. And then the court rules are different because I had to read the instructions saying, and you cannot have a phone. Because right now, those of you who are listening, look around you. You've got your television, you've got your computer, you've got your iPhone and your iPad. And they're all within arm's reach, right? And we can't have jurors do that. So the instructions are different. There's a lot of things that are different. But now I have Zoom court on all the time. So I'm in the courtroom now, but we do have people Zooming in. So literally, some days I only have 7 people watching, and sometimes I have 100 people watching. And there are people from, Canada.
You can just log in and watch? Is that what's happening?
I can give you the Zoom link, but you can watch court. And
That's amazing.
like tomorrow is motion day. Wednesdays are motion days. Terribly. And so a lot of people will be on there. And I've had people from New Zealand and Australia and Germany and, the UK. People want to know about our jury system and our legal system.
How does it work? How does the sausage get made? That's what they want to know.
So they're watching. And then sometimes they'll send me notes saying, we don't have life. We only have life as 35 years, even if you kill 100 people. Well, no. And so it's actually a learning experience for me, but it's fascinating to people outside of our system.
That's fast. Okay, we have a question. We have a comment here from Trey Grigg. Trey's a good friend of mine. He says, "Let's go, Matthew. Love this start for you. Do you have to be a lawyer to be on the show? No, but it helps. It does help if you are. You might be able to pass the bar. Maybe. We're doing a good job. We haven't covered torts yet, so we have to get to that. But I have a question for you. So if people are using the Zoom and the virtual court, I had lawyers that would come to me and say, Matt, it's a terrible experience. I can't talk to opposing counsel in the hallway. I can't see my colleagues. I just come in, sit in the office, talk on the thing. And then I have other lawyers who've been practicing for years and they're like, I love it. I hate talking to other lawyers. I just want to do my thing and go.
Yeah. I think we all miss the human contact, but they can talk. I mean, if somebody says, I want to talk, then we put them in a breakout room. And so they can talk to counsel, the prosecutors. There's oftentimes the defendant will be done with whatever hearing we were having. And they'll say, could I just spend a few more minutes with my lawyer? And I say, sure, put him in a breakout room. And it saves the lawyer, think about it, from driving down to go see him in the jail or wherever. I mean, it saves everybody time. And then, as a lawyer, going back to your office and having 49 phone calls because you were in court is not fun. I did that for 20 years. So it saves a lot of time. And it's also a lot safer for everybody in the community, especially law enforcement, because they're not transporting felons, alleged felons. And sometimes they are convicted felons who still have pending crimes. And so it's just a lot safer. We get a lot more done. I really like Zoom. I do miss some of the human contact, but I sort of have a mixed bag now. I have attorneys who want to come in court, and they do. And I have others who are just happy on Zoom. And we have to make a record of that, of course. But and law students are just, zooming in from all over the place because
absolutely for law students, this must be amazing.
Yeah.
how has social media improved the courtroom?
Well, in terms of
Like,
experts,
are everybody are they doing stuff in the courtroom? Are people able to bring their phones in with them? Are you people like tweeting about cases, or is it you
no,
have instructions
I
for this?
don't use, yeah, no, I don't let them record. And because, there's only one official transcript, and that's what the court reporter does. Now, there are some judges who need the media. I'm sorry, I don't. And I-
You
if
earn your media. That's what you
well,
do.
if there's a case that's interesting, the media will send a note and they'll record it, and they get permission to do that. But and there are some judges who just keep their cases out there for 30 days or whatever. They think that's good. I don't think that's good. I think there's only one chance, to see it, and then the rest is called a transcript, because somebody could be found not guilty or not responsible if this is a civil case, but they're out there for 30 days. That's not good. And I think it's a violation of the rules. And some judges are using it like their own TV judge show. I'm just not doing that, but I think it's important for access, especially since we have COVID numbers, to have an open courtroom, and Zoom is helping. And then, of course, attorneys are really good with being able to show on the screen pieces of evidence. And it's a
Yeah.
whole new learning curve than, what you did in TPI, the Trial Practice Institute. And last year I taught TPI, Trial Practice Institute, the trial class on Zoom, which was not
Wow.
so much fun, except that now the lawyers, as they're arguing, they have to learn to stand in a place, to show the evidence, to do all sorts of things with
Point.
the technology. So now, as they're coming in the courtroom, they're even more proficient, which makes things go very smoothly. And I think it's been a tough couple of years, but really educational, and has made us technology forward instead of backward.
Well, when I think about like with social media, is like in every civil litigation case I ever dealt with, I'm requesting social media. Like I want to know, like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Who are you talking to? And all the like, so many people think, well, the things that I do on social media, there's some privacy to that. I don't have to disclose that, but no, like it's all discoverable. And if you did something you shouldn't have done, people are going to find out. That's just kind of how it works now.
Yeah.
What other technology are you seeing getting into the courtroom? What other things are becoming more pervasive?
In terms of technology, there really isn't. I mean, I have bigger screens so that we can see more.
Mhm.
And, so there's not really different technology. It's really the Zoom and the color printers, and being able to, when there's an exhibit up, if you mark on the screen, to be able to print that. So you have, exhibit A. So it's not just two, it's 2A, which is what the defendant marked, and those kinds of things. The technology is really helping make a better transcript. And we're using, so I will record Zoom, not for public consumption, but because we do have blips once in a while, and I'll record it to check the quality, but also sometimes the court reporter can't hear what someone said, so she can play it back, because even though we
Yeah,
didn't hear it, it's still there in the recording.
makes
Um,
sense.
so I don't know. I think it's here to stay, and I
Like,
think it's really positive.
well, so where I'm in these days, I'm in the supply chain. So we have these trends of autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, connected things, all of this, and autonomous or artificial intelligence. I know it's coming for us in the legal profession. I know it is. Like there will be a day when the robot writes a brief better than I do. Not yet, robot. I'm still better than you. But what do you think about that? Do you worry? Does that something that crosses your mind? Like, what is the nature of law in 10, 20 years from now?
I don't worry about it, because really, as a lawyer, it's an art form, as you know. So we have cross examination. There's not going to be a computer that can cross examine or know the case as well. And maybe it can help prep you, like it does
Mhm.
for an exam. But unless you actually fed in all the data, there's nothing like the human being. And I don't think any machine will take it over. But I do think the technology is helpful, so that when we have, let's say, an expert in Florida, they can hop on Zoom. We don't need the D-Bennett essay, which is, the deposition on video.
Mhm.
We can just do it like that. And it's just more impromptu. There's sometimes better cross. I can ask questions. A D-Bennett essay, I can't. And sometimes there's things that I wish the lawyers would have asked. So I think we're going to overall get better information into the record than doing the video depths and other things that people do ahead of time and then show the jury. And the jury's more awake, even on the screen when they're watching. It's like watching television, and they're
Mhm.
hearing it, and it's live stream, right? So the
That's
expert
right.
can,
Just like this.
yeah. So, I think they're paying attention. I think it actually makes our legal system more credible. The one thing I have to say is that I am still shocked that in the legislature, they have media every single day. I think judges ought to have media watching them every single day.
Yeah,
So,
I agree
because
with you.
my newspaper's so thin, the only way I know what's going on in my community is what lands on my docket.
Oh, wow. Local
Think
news is
about
going
that.
away. That's a really good point. Like, the business of media has changed. It's not selling cars on the back of the classifieds that drive the value of the newspaper circulation down. It's all internet. And what the internet sells you is usually fear and anger and vitriol and all sorts of other things. That's a really good point. Okay,
Yeah.
let's get something happier.
Yeah.
Let's say that I am thinking about going to law school. What would you tell a version of yourself in another time? What would you expect going into it? Is it a career worth pursuing? What makes you excited about the law today?
Hmm. I think that changing the law is what makes me excited about it. And I think it is a wonderful career because it does give you credibility. And the law, to me, I think about the law as like a weed. If a lawyer doesn't have enough to do, there's always a place that needs a lawyer. And the lawyer, it's not just, you don't have to practice law. You can be a lobbyist, you can be a CEO, you can be in business. Being a lawyer gives you so much credibility. And it's not about the law, it's about critical thinking. There's
That's right.
no class in any, I don't care what major, that is going to have you critically think as well as what we do in law school, because we not only critically think about it, we have to argue it, sustain it, document it, turn it upside down, sideways, have it fit with court rules, case law, statutes, put it all together. And it's not easy. And, the thing that makes me excited about it is changing the laws, making it better, working with the legislature to say, you messed up. Why aren't you calling judges and finding out what's the implication of what you're doing? And they don't do that. Right now, I could spew off a dozen laws that ought to be changed. Have any of them asked me? No. But have I walked over there a few times and said, we need this change? They've done it and it's passed.
That's
So,
awesome.
I think we need more people in law, because even if you want to own a coffee shop, you got to know the legalities. You got to
That's
watch the
right.
numbers and the money. You got to see, should I prosecute on this or not? I mean, it's just, I got to get a bank loan. That law degree will help you get one.
That's right. That's right. I think about like the law, and just back to my supply chain background. You can't opt out of supply chain. You can't opt out of the law. It is what it is. And you learn how to critically think. The idea of thinking like a lawyer is something that really resonates with all sorts of people, because you have to understand things from both sides and the history of how you got here. Speaking of
Right.
a very specific type of law that I'm on my own side, I'm part of a group that's trying to end non-competes in the supply chain business. So in the United States, there's between 30 and 60 million people that have signed non-competition agreements. These are middle managers or they're salespeople, never realizing that these post-employment restrictive covenants follow you when you're done. They're not paid
Right.
separately for this. And each state changes in the law. So some states require separate consideration. But I hate non-competes. I hate the nature of those documents, and I love to fight them.
Totally agree with you. And in fact, I was shocked. I saw a doctor. I get migraines. And so I see a neurologist, and, he gets them all under control. And I love this guy. He's done such a great job with me. And then he decides to leave Michigan State, and they had a non-compete. So he had to go to work. Yeah, he had to go to a work for a hospital. I don't remember, like about 80 miles away. He went because he couldn't work in this area. So I drove for my appointments for over a year until that non-compete expired. And
Yeah,
now he's back and has a couple of offices and does great. And I'm thrilled. But, nobody thinks about the consumer. Nobody thinks about what happened to us. We need choice.
that's
If
right.
you've done a good job, then we'll be happy to stay with you. But if you've got someone who's done a better job, I'm going with that person, and I will go the distance.
There you go. Okay. That's a great message, everyone. It is for the customer and for the client that you don't
Yeah,
have the non-competes. If you
right.
make it in place, you do a disservice to your customer, to your employees, and ultimately your shareholders. It's a dumb idea. It's like there's a case I'm following. I'll kind of give you a heads up on it because it's fun. There's a company called Four Kites, and they are suing two people. One of them worked there for 6 months, and they're suing them in Cook County in Chancery Court, looking to get a temporary restraining order because this implementation manager hiring at a competitive firm will cause irreparable harm. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. They're cowards. They're cowards, these companies. I'm glad that your doctor's able to get past the non-compete. It is shocking. I've seen them with mechanics. I saw them with designers from Trunk Club. It's absurd. It is everywhere, and it's something we can all stop. And this is why people should be in the law. You should learn about these things and try to fight them because you can change it.
Right. Well, and the thing is, if you think about it, you are not probably going to meet the president. You are
Mm.
probably not going to meet, even your state senator. You may or may not, but you will definitely meet a judge. Definitely. You will have a traffic ticket. You'll have a small claims issue. You will have a car accident. You will have someone who doesn't pay their rent or sells you a lemon car, or um, you had one too many drinks and you end up with a drunk driving, and everybody's going to die. They'll be in probate court, right?
Yeah.
So it
Oh,
doesn't matter,
probate. I don't
right?
want to think
You get
about
a
time.
60% of all marriages end up in divorce, or they'll be in family court. So it doesn't really matter what kind of judge or court. Every single human will, during their lifetime or even just at their death, bringing their family in, right, will have contact with a judge. So why not know something about the law? My parents are not doing great. My dad has Parkinson's, my mother has a heart
Oh,
condition. She's not bad, but we have these people in the house taking care of them. Now, here's the thing. I'm always advocating for them, and I know the law. And I will call
yeah.
them and say, "So would you like to pay me for training your people? Because so far I've been training them. Either train them better or I report you, you know?"
Good for
And
you.
you have to be an advocate. And I think that in the law, you learn to be an advocate for yourself, for your family, for your client, for your community. And that's a really important lesson for everybody.
Absolutely. I can't emphasize that enough. Is it the best part of being an attorney is helping serve people to understand this insane system. Because I mean, we learn it like civil procedure, criminal procedure is a specialized course just to learn how it works. And if you can help people advocate for themselves, learn how to better advocate or negotiate, it's phenomenal. What should people do, or what should people think about judges? So you are a judge. Like, how far should we bow? What is the proper terminology? Tell me, what's the way that you want people to think about talking to a judge?
Well, in the courtroom, it's kind of like in the church when you talk to your priest or your rabbi or whatever. There's a certain decorum and respect. And there has to be that. So in the
Mhm.
courtroom, it's your honor, judge. You don't wear a hat. You have sort of those church rules. For me, the rest, if you want to say, "Hey, Rose," I'm good with that. I think that you should treat me as your neighbor or your mother or your sister. I am part of the community. I represent you as a person in the community, and I am your voice. So talk to me just like you would your neighbor, your friend, your mom, your husband, your wife, whatever. That's how I want to be treated. I know that there are judges who have the robe disease, and you better bow to them everywhere they go.
I would
I don't,
never take that robe
you
off.
know,
I would only wear it, maybe get a cape. I don't know, but like
you know,
it would never come off.
I'm still uncomfortable when my law clerk says all rise and I walk in and everybody's standing there because I think, geez, that's for church. And why are they doing that for me? But it's really just a sign of respect for what we do. And I think that our country does deserve that respect because we have the best laws. They're not perfect. We do need to fix some things, but I think we do have the best justice system. And it's really kind of like putting your hand over your heart for the flag. It's just really an American thing to do. But outside the courtroom, I just want to be treated like any mom in the neighborhood. And that's because those moms and dads elected me. And I'm one
That's
of
right.
you. I'm not separate and apart from you. And I think the judges who think they are higher than the people who elected them, they ought to retire and go pour their coffee.
I agree with that. Well, so, like, in terms of like being a judge, like, how many cases will you actively have at a given time?
Oh, geez. So when I was a district judge for 4 years, I handled somewhere between 30 and 40,000 cases a year. But keep in mind, those were preliminary exams, federal felony cases getting bound over. Those were all traffic tickets. Those were small claims appeals. They were cases under $25,000 and they were misdemeanors. So crimes up to a year. Now I have 100% criminal docket. So, and because of COVID, I probably have about 400 cases at any given time right now, but we're cleaning the docket, so hopefully it will be, down to about half of that. But um, I, I don't know. I mean, tomorrow I probably have about 40 cases. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, I want to have a weapons court, not a gun court, but a weapons court, because there's just too many weapons and guns on the street. And I really want to have a specialty court. And I got some flack from the chief judge for that, and a whole other story.
Well, that's a
But
story I want to hear at another time
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So I said, well, that's okay. I can do it my own way. You can't tell me what to do. So
That's right.
I called in.
Who would dare? Who would dare?
Yeah, well, so I called in about 80 cases. I talked to my prosecutor and I said, I want all the gun cases called in so that we can look at them, deal with it, treat them, and see what's going on. And, I'm going to make sure that they get training, because I don't believe that people who have guns are never going, just because they come in front of me, they're never going to have a gun again. So I'm making sure that we're following federal law, but that they get some gun training. I had a 6-year-old boy who his dad's gun was in the car, not locked, not secured. It was loaded, and he fired it. He shot himself through the arm and the leg. Now, granted, he didn't die. He's fine. But that dad should have, right, locked it up, not had it loaded, known how to clean it, zero it, store it, all of that. We learned that in the military. It's such a huge responsibility. So I'm calling in all the gun cases and I'm going to deal with them. It may not be an official specialty court, but damn it, I'm going to address this issue the best I can.
Yeah, absolutely. You're in the field. You're living this thing every single day. So there's politicians who have positions and all these other things, but they're not living it. They're not dealing with it. That's not part of their community being affected the way that it affects your community. Well,
Well,
we're getting close to,
politicians like to make headlines. I like to
that's
make
right.
change, real change,
Ah,
immediate.
that's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt right there.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to remember this. We're going to make it. It's going to be amazing. We're getting close to the hour here. The uncertainty hour is coming to close to an end. I have a couple final kind of questions, and they're kind of just off the top of my head. What are you watching these days? Are you streaming? What do you watch? What is something that a judge finds interesting?
I watch a lot of Netflix and a lot of stupid TV. I just stayed up over the weekend and finished Grace and Frankie. Love, 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 love that show. I really kind of watch stupid shows like that. When I don't know what to watch, believe it or not, I watch Gilmore Girls reruns,
There you
and
go.
I could probably act out every single episode, but it sort of calms me. It's a good show. I do not want to watch blood, guts, murder,
You
spooky,
see that in the workday.
because I do that. I can tell you what a body looks like. I can tell you an autopsy, what happens at an autopsy. I don't need to see it in television. So I kind of watch stupid TV. Heartland. I love Heartland. It's a Canadian show. If you haven't seen it, it's just,
Oh, I'll check it out.
it's like a horse whisperer kind of show, but it's magnificent. You see the countryside. So I watch things that are a little bit lighter. And when all else fails, it's either Hallmark or Gilmore Girls.
There you go. My wife and I just finished watching The Punisher it was on Netflix originally. Now it's on Disney. And now we're watching Dope Sick on Hulu. And
Oh,
it really depresses me. It depresses me how Oxycontin got into everything and ruined the country. But that's probably another show. Um, Thank you so much. I,
thank
I
you.
am I am so impressed by what you've been able to achieve in your career, and you are a role model for so many. And I want people like being a lawyer's hard. I mean, this is one of the highest rates of alcoholism. It's one of John Radvinsky. He's going to say, Heartland's awesome. You're in good company. He's a
Oh,
fan.
good. Yes, let's keep it going.
But it is hard being an attorney. We have the highest rates of depression. We have some of the highest rates of alcohol and substance abuse. We have very, very ancient ways of dealing with women in the profession. And what I love about what you do is that you are an advocate, not just for your students, not just for the plaintiffs and the prosecutors and you're an advocate for everybody. And
Thank you.
I love watching what you do. So where can people find you? I want to get everywhere they
So,
can find you.
yeah. So, and I should have a list, shouldn't I? So I'm on Facebook. I really need to get one of those check mark thingies so I can have more followers because I think I'm right about 5,000. But I'm also on Instagram and I'm also on Twitter. You can also find me on Amazon. I have 4 novels out. And they're in every format, so Audible and large print, small print, ebook, all of that, and I will continue to write. And I don't know. I guess you can find me at the court. Aquilina at ingham.org is my work email, and authoraquilina at gmail.com is my personal email. So if you need some help or you need a speaker or you have a question, just join in and I will give you the Zoom for court.
Yes,
And
I will ping you, and you give me those things. I will give them to our audience members. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to close off the show, so give me 1 second. Everybody who's at home, who's watching this and enjoying it, thank you for tuning in. This is our first shot at the uncertainty hour. It has been quite uncertain, but we're going to keep doing it. We're going to bring people that I know are interesting, that will teach you something, inspire you, and hopefully you'll learn something. As always, I'm so excited to be here. It's a little bit late, so I'll let you guys go. Have a terrific evening. I'm going to end the broadcast. So you and I are still here. I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll talk for a second. Bye,
thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
We did it.